Our sexual economy is not based upon the egg standard. Instead, we are being oppressed through anal fiat. Not just our sexual economy, but our social economy. One that has enabled the hottest new Vine Marathon that I released last Wednesday, Vine Marathon Volume 5. And just a couple of things I would like to say about Vine Marathon Volume 5. And this ties in with what I just said. How everything is based around ass sex. It is the new religion. The current religion. The first ever empire to be based around asses, assholes, anuses. If you want to know who rules over you, look at who you're not allowed to criticize. And thanks to everyone who shared Vine Marathon Volume 5. Hopefully it changed some minds. Hopefully it made people rethink some things. But a common refrain that I encountered was, I support the LGBT community, but this is just cringe. Do you not realize? Of course you don't realize that these kids realize who sits at the top of our social ladder. These kids want to be gay because, well, look who gets all the praise and none of the criticism. These kids, these teenage girls who have feminine faces and bodies, repeating the mantra, not a girl, not a girl, not a girl, not a girl, not a girl. Gender fluid, genderqueer. Not a girl, not a girl, not a girl. It's creepy. But you'll notice, in between some of those vines, I included quote-unquote normal gay people to hopefully highlight to you, this is what they're trying to be like. You're not allowed to criticize gay people. Over the last however many decades it's been a few, the LGBT community has done an excellent job at obscuring many facts, many unflattering facts about themselves. Whether it's lesbians being incredibly prone to domestic violence and child abuse, whether it's homosexual men being alarmingly prone to getting HIV still, 30 years after it was known as the gay cancer. Despite that, however, what is it? 2% of the population? 2% of the population. 3 at most. 4 at most. Between 2 and 4%. Gallup poll puts it at 3.4, I believe. But that includes all of the LGBT spectrum. So 3.4% of the population still makes up something like 60% of all HIV infections. And that's not counting pre-existing ones, but new ones. Which is even worse. You would think these numbers would go down, but apparently not. And all sorts of other literal and figurative pathologies. And this came from one of my loyal Twitter followers, Mikhail Prokhorov, sent me this screenshot that I'm about to read for you here. And it's a screenshot of some Tumblr exchange. And this is like 3 or 4 different Tumblr users talking to each other. This made my cock so happy, spewing my demonic seed all over the word of God. Fuck Christ, hail Satan. And then someone else replied to this, fucking beautiful demon seep spewing all over that worthless book. Hail Satan. One of my favorites. Awesome cum. Love spewing on Hotel Bible. Came on a Bible at my grandma's church way in the back. Hot. I don't think this person's first language is English or diseases. Certain diseases affect linguistic abilities, but just keep that in mind. Coming on Bibles. What the fuck? And this is just one screenshot with a few of these wayward souls talking to one another. I have many screenshots in my vault, none quite as disturbing as this, that share the same sentiment. They're all like, smoke meth, hail Satan. calling themselves posies and piggies and all this shit. Not so clean-cut and wholesome, is it? Cum-stained Bibles. That's what you want your kid being a part of. That's what you want your kid doing. That's what you want as the shining example of what your society can produce. Basing your life around cum. And a couple of the vines that I included, they mentioned Bible in the context of homosexual behavior. And one of them, this trans kid, was like, "Hail Satan." Let's put this into context here. Let's give an example. What if these evil fundamentalist Christians that are apparently running around causing havoc upon American society, what if one of them pulled out their dick and started jerking off onto a Quran? What do you think would happen? I can't answer that for you, because it wouldn't. Hell, I don't even think Muslims would think to jerk off on a holy Bible. Yet, these outcasts, who are now the highest shining moral beacon that we have to offer, they could think of this kind of evil. Jizzing on a Bible at your grandmother's church. Spewing your HIV positive meth-fueled genetic material on the Word of God. So to get back to where we started, however many minutes ago, 7 minutes ago, I think. To get back where we started, thank you everyone who has watched and shared Vine Marathon Volume 5. I think somebody told me it is a massive red pill for their normal friends. And I, excuse the train sound there, and I think that's a good thing. Listen to that train, that beautiful train. Okay, I think it's stopped now, but to the others who have made other comments, like, I support this, but this is cringe, that's all fine, but who's causing it? Who is causing it? Who is encouraging these kids indirectly to behave in such a way? What do these kids want to be? You know, once upon a time, kids wanted to be astronauts, firemen, doctors, lawyers. Something like that. Something with a title. Something that is of use to society. And now, kids want to swap around their genders. Because, I guess that's what school teaches nowadays. That's where your property taxes are going, middle class. Do you like the world around you? Do you like what your money is going towards? Of course you do. Because it occupies children's time. Children you didn't want to have but felt obligated to have in the first place. Or for some reason, some dubious reason. Maybe you felt incomplete without a child, and, you know, maybe that's fair. But you had no interest in raising it. And now look what's happened. Bibles stained with semen, and lots and lots of vines, lots and lots of kids, hundreds of kids, bitching about gender. Because they want to be a part of the semen-stained Bible club. So I'm about to read to you an article written by a member of the semen-stained Bible club named Brandon Robertson, this idiot. And this is about, the title of the article is called How Kim Davis's Imprisonment is a Win for Religious Liberty. So here we go, and I will link to this below, but not to the website, because I am not giving shit traffic that I disapprove of. It finally happened. On the morning of September 3rd, 2015, federal marshals placed Kim Davis, the Kentucky clerk who refused to issue marriage licenses to LGBTQ couples, under arrest for contempt of court. Davis had been refusing to issue licenses in her county for weeks, arguing that she shouldn't be forced to issue licenses to same-sex couples because it violated her Christian faith. Her case made it all the way to the Supreme Court, who turned down her ruling, and she was ordered by Judge David Bunning to continue issuing marriage licenses in accordance with both the law and her stated responsibilities as an agent of the state. After continuing to refuse to submit to Judge Bunning's orders, Kim was finally arrested, removing her from her position as county clerk. As soon as the news of Davis's arrest broke, conservative Christians began referring to Davis as a martyr, claiming that her arrest crossed the line into persecution because of her Christian faith. As an evangelical myself, there you go, I want to suggest a different perspective than the one many of my other brothers and sisters have been offering. I believe that Kim Davis's arrest is neither persecution or an impingement on her religious liberties. In fact, I believe her arrest actually strengthens religious liberty nationwide. Religious liberty is a concept that is based on the First Amendment of the Constitution, which states, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." It is the fundamental principle that ensures that all Americans will be able to practice their religious convictions freely and openly, without fear of government, regulation, or prohibition. It is also the principle that bolsters the idea of separation of church and state. While religious institutions are guaranteed protections against any government regulation or involvement in their religious life, the government is also protected from religious institutions' attempts to garner political power over the nation. What this means is that anyone who functions as an agent of the state must remain religiously neutral, providing equal service, treatment, and rights to all people regardless of religious, ethical, social, and cultural backgrounds. Let me tell you what's what, dipshit. This apparently is one of your sisters in Christ. Apparently. I don't know which God you worship, which version of the God you worship, even though I think you worship your own asshole and you just use Christ as a rationalization for it. She would have denied your ass, rightfully, a marriage license, despite the fact that you belong apparently to the same church. Also, did it ever cross your mind that there is more than one religion that opposes your religion? Let's just call it what it is. What are the largest religions in the world? What are the largest churches in the world? Islam has, I think, at this point, more followers than the Roman Catholic Church. And I could be wrong about that, but it's well on its way to overtaking it, if it hasn't already. But I don't think I can make my points any further unless I read the rest of this vomit. Where did I leave off? There we are. This separation is one of the fundamental pillars of American society. The church will never overtake the government, and the government will never overtake the church. This is what our founding fathers fought for. This is what it means to be an American. And Kim Davis posed a great threat to the religious liberties of our nation by refusing to carry out her duties as an agent of the state, issuing marriage licenses to all couples, regardless of their sexuality or gender identity. Davis forced her Christian faith on the people of Rowan County and violated their right to be able to receive equal treatment from the government, regardless of their sexuality, race, religion, or values. If Davis was able to continue serving as the county clerk, she could, in theory, continue to refuse to grant marriage licenses or provide services to everyone she agreed with, which would, in effect, completely dissolve the religious freedoms of the people in her county. What's worse, dipshit? Being denied a marriage license, or going to jail? You're still able to practice your religion without a marriage license. Is she? Is she able to freely practice her religion? Who is actually losing out on their religious liberties here? Certainly not you, you stupid fuck. If by being denied a marriage license is a violation of religious liberty, then you are admitting that marriage is not an institution of the government, but an institution of God. Therefore, it should take place within the church and only the church. So if that's the case, the government is partaking in a religious institution, which is a violation of the separation of church and state, which is apparently mandated by the Constitution, even though it is not in the Constitution. The words separation of church and state are not in the Constitution. That interpretation came from outside of the Constitution, when somebody decided to eavesdrop on the letters of one of the founding fathers. I can't remember who. But yeah, let's assume those words are in there. Why is the government making money off of marriage licenses when marriage is a religious institution? So take your pick, because these are the only two options that make any sense. Either marriage is an inherently religious institution, and her issuing these things is a direct violation of the separation of church and state, or marriage has nothing to do with religion. Marriage has fuck all to do with religion. Therefore, she is not violating anyone's religious liberties. Now, you might say, well, she's a Christian and that's the reason why she's doing it. Okay, say tomorrow she says, I'm an atheist. Haha, just kidding, it was all a ruse. I think God is bullshit. I don't believe in any God. What would change? Nothing would change. She'd still be in prison, because you, unfortunately, sit at the top of the social hierarchy, despite the fact that you've done really nothing to earn it. But let's continue with this piece of shit article and see if you have anything worth saying. For those who struggle to see my point, think of this in another situation. What if Kim Davis believed, based on her religious convictions, that guns should be outlawed, and because of that she refused to grant gun licenses to those who tried to obtain them, legally through the court, claiming that issuing gun license violated her conscience? Would that not be a clear violation of both the First and Second Amendments? And if she was allowed to continue serving as clerk while holding such views, would it not pose a serious threat to the First and Second Amendment rights of the people of Rowan County? Of course it would, and our argument would be that Davis has not right imposing her religious, moral, or political beliefs on any person in her county. Hire an editor, buddy. Instead, as an agent of the state, she should either do her job neutrally or quit. The fact that Kim Davis was taken to jail instead of fined is a question of major controversy. Many people believe that this action is too extreme. She should have been fined, many will argue. No, she shouldn't have been jailed or fined. I will argue neither of those points. And whoever argues that she should have been fined is a dipshit just like you. However, when we consider that Kim Davis has raised thousands of dollars on Indiegogo and has the backing of many extreme right-winged religious and political organizations, it becomes clear that fining her would have done virtually nothing. Kim received a legal order from her superiors to continue issuing marriage licenses in accordance with the law, and she refused. It is not uncommon in contempt of court cases for a judge to order jail time. Therefore, Kim's situation is actually not unique. It's not extreme, it's actually quite common. And her imprisonment serves as a warning to those in power who seek to impose their religious beliefs on their constituency. It's a violation of the foundational principles of our country, and there will be legal consequences. It's easy to spin Kim Davis's story as one of persecution. It's easy to get on Fox News and warn pastors that this is what's coming for them if they refuse to perform same-sex marriage. Well, it is. But to do so would be dishonest. How? Really, how? When churches start losing their tax-exempt status, would it still be dishonest? Because that's what's coming. Book it. Because the reality is that Kim Davis is not being persecuted for her faith. She's reaping the consequences of refusing to do her job as an agent of the state. Davis is welcome to hold her beliefs as tightly as she would like, but when she is at work, she needs to do her job. If her job violates her conscience, then she should quit, because imposing her beliefs on the people of Rowan County is not an option. It's a violation of one of the highest and most sacred American values, religious liberty. And all those who seek to protect and defend Americans' rights to freely practice their faith without fear of government regulation should be standing firmly against Davis's actions. Again, the people she's refusing services to, they're not being persecuted because of their religion. Their ability to freely exercise their religion, whatever it may be, it's no religion I want to be a part of. She is obstructing their religious liberty in no conceivable way. She's not forcing Muslims to be Christians. She's not forcing Mormons to deny Joseph Smith. Let's go back and read that passage about the First Amendment that you included here. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, who makes laws? Congress. Guess who doesn't make laws? The Supreme Court. And the lower courts, which are responsible for her arrest. Now, I know you might be thinking, but courts don't make laws. So county clerks make laws now? Did the Constitution change suddenly while we were talking and now it says county clerks shall make no law? Fuck you and good night. Wait, hold on. I forgot something. This gay judge is refusing to perform straight marriages. No jail time, no media outrage. An openly gay Texas judge says she refuses to conduct marriage ceremonies for straight couples. No one tried to put her in jail. No federal judges tried to condemn her. The Dallas County Judge Tanya Parker explained her decision at a monthly meeting for the Stonewall Democrats of Dallas. I do not perform them because it is not an equal application of the law, period, she said, according to the Dallas Voice, a newspaper for the gay community. Parker is believed to be the first openly gay African-American elected official in the history of the state, according to NY Daily News. Parker told the audience that while she refuses to conduct the ceremony, she explains her reasoning to the couples. I use it as my opportunity to give them a lesson about marriage equality in the state, because I feel like I have to tell them why I'm turning them away, she said. Her refusal to marry people based on the fact that they were not homosexuals wasn't backed by any faith-based belief or anything other than a personal vendetta. You go, girl. You correct them historical injustices. Because history is told through, make work bullshit government jobs. The reason why there is no arrest made to put this woman behind bars, the reason why there exists no media outrage is very simple. The left in general, which includes homosexuals, homophiles, activists, judges like this, pieces of shit like the author of the article that I just read, the one that I read before, the one about the gay black judge. They don't play by any rules. They invent a lot of rules, but they make up a lot of bullshit, but they play by none of them. It's entirely feminine how they behave. Entirely. They maximize benefit and minimize cost through whatever means they can, whether they follow the rules or not, and generally they don't. Whereas a masculine approach would be choosing from a set of costs and benefits and not seeking to pass the costs on to anybody else. In other words, adjusting to circumstances. Ideally, circumstances of his own creation, but not here, not there. So I'm going to read a message I got, and I think everybody should hear this. And this is semi-related to everything we just discussed. ACF, relatively new listener to your radio show. I've watched all of your Tumblristas and seen all of the Vine marathons, even if I had to take breaks to cry. And I'm glad that you are a good source of wisdom that I can confide to anonymously and still get a reasonable answer. I almost never mention this even anonymously anywhere out of fear of people recognizing the story and calling me out. I've gotten up the courage to finally ask for help or even just emotional guidance because I'm seriously worried about the state that my generation is in. I'm a JROTC student in high school and would like to give you a little backstory before asking my question. I apologize in advance for it being so long, but this is a whopper. Last year was my freshman year in high school. There was this one kid who, for now, I will call Ken. Ken had bright blue hair, was flamboyantly homosexual, and really liked talking about LGBT. Most meetings in homeroom he would bring it up, and at one point he had attempted to organize a Pride Week at the school. I was fine with this. Not too comfortable, but not incredibly disturbed. About the third day of school after joining the JROTC, I sat at the lunch table with a few other kids from my classes. Suddenly the topic of being LGBT came up and everybody went around the table saying what they were. Bisexual, lesbian, bisexual. Got to me, I said I was straight. Suddenly Ken starts barreling through the lunchroom towards us and starts talking about it all and about how he was gay. I kind of ignored him, but suddenly I hear him exclaim that he's going to kiss my friend that sat in front of me who was bisexual. I assumed it was going to be a stupid joke kiss, but I looked up and suddenly they were full on making out in front of me. No teacher came over until at least 20 seconds after, in which he said, hey, don't do that, please. It's not like I think love you or anything, yada yada homophobia, but please don't do that here, before he sulked away. I've always been a tolerant person. Even now I can't bring myself to hate anybody. I didn't particularly think highly of Ken or my friend for doing this. However, it would get much worse than just this. Eventually Ken would be pushed into our JROTC due to his grades. Out of all classes, he was put into mine. My friend, whom he had kissed, was also in my class at the time, but ended up leaving because Ken was joining. I asked why, and he told me this nightmarish tale. They had been off and on in a relationship multiple times throughout the course of the half year. They had sexual relations. Ken cheated at least once. At one point, Ken accused my friend of raping him in the bathroom, but had it dropped. He said he was leaving because he didn't want to deal with Ken, who he kept dating off and on throughout the rest of the year anyways. Ken joins the JROTC and everything is relatively normal, quote-unquote normal, at first. Ken would often skip class, however, to meet with his counselor, mostly to talk and skip having to wear the uniform on uniform days. However, one day our senior instructor comes into the classroom and has a class meeting with us all. He announced that Ken was transitioning into a woman and needed to be respected and treated as one. This was once again another moment where I was wishing that I was a liberal, so I'd see nothing wrong with it, instead of dying on the inside. When I thought it couldn't get any worse, our senior instructor takes me and the one other female present in the class out of the hallway to tell us that Ken is not comfortable using the male restrooms anymore. He asked us if we were okay with him using the bathrooms with us to change into PT gear and stuff for class. I obviously had enough and said no. For the rest of the year, Ken would come in with wigs, dresses, and would regularly get angry if someone didn't use his pronouns. We went to camp and were doing a fun activity, and he had to go to the bathroom. I wanted to do the activity, and there was a male's restroom right next to us. I told him since he apparently still had a penis, he should use the male's restroom. The entire walk all the way over to the female's bathroom, I was scolded on being a jerk and intolerant and absolutely had to believe he was a female. We ended up missing the activity because of this. The other female cadets in the camp were also angry about Ken because he had to use the female restrooms to shower alone and often took a very long time doing so, taking away from the shower time for the girls. Finally, near the end of the year, he attempted to get certain language banned in the classroom because it offended him after a cadet used the word gay to describe another cadet as a joke. Then he left at the end of the year. I was respectful and nice to him the entire way, and yet he most likely left seeing me as the most hateful out of anybody because I had accidentally called him he a few times. And then you provide the TLDR. Gay then transgender kid comes into JROTC, makes instructors force language censorship. doesn't participate in the program aside from coming to a camp and a ball, and he gets really fussy when misgendered, degenerate and sexually active in front of me and others. Having to deal with this last year, I fear for the program this year. I have grown attached to it and have spent my entire summer contributing to it, going in almost every day. I was lucky it was only one kid, that there was only half of the year. However, there are many freshmen coming into the program next year, and I know for a fact an entire year of even a couple of these kinds of people would be disastrous and completely destroy what we have since tried to build, a place that embodies all of America's values: freedom, patriotism, and hard work. I have very good communication with both my instructors, including the senior instructor in charge of the entire program. Whatever opinion or idea I may give in the future, they will take note of. To say the least, I have quite a bit of power except for the fact of the actual principal in school, which is most likely what forced Ken's actions through this program in the first place. At this point, I don't care what happens to me or how I am seen by the school. All that matters is that the program isn't deviated from its purpose and destroyed by the left. So my question to you, what can I do? What can I do to prevent the unavoidable horde? Is it avoidable? Is anything safe anymore? I shouldn't even be dealing with this. My English classes consisted of talk about oppression and reading leftist articles about Trayvon Martin and racism in America. Our homeroom classes endlessly spoke about loving everyone for who they are, and yet I can't even so much as whisper an opinion that leans any way from the left without being torn to shreds by the child feminists in my class. This leads me to one last question. What reason do I have to even care anymore? Is there even hope? I'm sorry this was so long, but it means a lot that you read it. Thanks, CF. I'm going to go back to listening to the rest of your show now. The problem that you have is that anybody who is any authority that can vouch for the story you just told me, anybody who can back that up and say, yeah, we don't want these kind of people in our programs because they're incredibly disruptive. The problem is that if your superiors, your teachers, your instructors say this, they will likely be fired. As unfortunate as this may be, their priority is their salary. The integrity, the sanity, the functionality of the program that they are a gatekeeper of, that comes second. And maybe I'm making some very false assumptions here. But they have families, most likely, your instructors. They have bills to pay. They have mortgages, whatever. They're not going to sacrifice their well-being. They're not going to sacrifice the well-being of their families for the time being in order to uphold something that means a lot to somebody. And I'm sure there are plenty more people like you who feel some attachment towards this program. As cynical as this program means a lot more to you than it means to your instructors when it comes down to it. Even if they know people like Ken are disruptive and cancerous to the environment, they're not going to sacrifice their occupation, their means of living, in order to prevent this from happening, in order to prevent people like Ken from ruining everything. The only thing that you can do is to conduct yourself at every opportunity. Every breath you take, you need to conduct yourself in a way that makes them not want to deal with people like you. Make it so that people like Ken want to avoid you. And this is difficult because there's no one thing you can do. There's no one trick, one shortcut to accomplish this. You have to conduct yourself in a way that's, for lack of a better term, alpha. You have to give other people a perception that you are untouchable, that you are unflappable, that you will not be moved. You are right and they are wrong. You are right and they are wrong. Do not take seriously anything they say. Do not take seriously the opinions they hold about you. And a bit of practical advice, you could stop being friends with people who put a lot of stock in their cum, in their sex. People whose priority in life is cum are unworthy of friendship. You don't want to hang out with them. You don't. They value the immediate. They do not value the long-term or eternal. And that's all I have to say. That's all I can really think of at this point. So, best of luck to you and be safe out there. Next. I've been listening to your stuff for a long time now, but this is the first question that I've actually chosen to send to you. I heard you say in a recent episode that you are against women's suffrage, and I'd like to hear your reasoning, considering I'm the only person who I know in my life with that opinion. It's always good to hear a like-minded individual with intellect. Stay frosty, may the gods bless your path. Well, I oppose it for a wide variety of reasons. There are a lot of reasons, but I'm just going to focus on the most important one. Women's suffrage takes away from the importance of family. It turns everybody into a rootless individual. Because people look at men only having the right to vote as being some discriminatory thing, like, hey, you can't have the vote, women. When in reality, it was not just one man, one vote, or one woman, one vote, one person, one vote. It was one family, one vote. A man's interest was his family. And this was not for misogynistic purposes. The powers that be realized we need to limit the structure of democracy in order for it to function. The less amount of people making the decisions, the better. Because letting everyone vote turns households against one another, turns entire families against one another. It encourages people to have competing interests. Letting everyone vote encourages people to develop independent of their families, of their kin. To remove themselves from the interests of their families. Some of you out there are thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Shouldn't you be independent from your family? What's wrong with that? Shouldn't you have your own interests? The point is, when you have unified families, you have a unified culture. When you have a unified culture, you have a stronger culture. When your culture is not divided in every which way, you can cooperate towards a common goal. And that common goal serves more people than it does not serve. So what results is a fractured culture. Talk to your average woman voter. Ask her what she thinks is the most important thing this election cycle. She'll say birth control and abortions. What happens when you let everyone vote? You get people voting with their pussies. Magina. And when women make decisions that fall outside of the jurisdiction of their pussy, they're very hostile towards that. Example of this, Ann Coulter. Your average female voter will probably become a raging misogynist when the subject of Ann Coulter comes up. Okay, I have a lot of questions left, so I'm going to plow through these, and I apologize if some of them turn out abbreviated, but it's the way it's gotta be. People seem so quick to rush to try and label themselves as something abnormal, gay, bi, asexual, furry, brony, etc., and complain when people don't see them as average. Why exactly do you think people are so hostile to the idea of being average? And while we're on the topic of abnormality, what exactly is your opinion on asexuals, who find it insulting when people think it's strange that they don't want to have sex, acting as if a little doubt is a personal attack to the highest degree? Let's also not forget that you can be sex-positive asexual somehow. Everyone wants to feel special in their own way. Everyone wants to feel indispensable in their own way. In previous eras, you would accomplish this by being a good friend to somebody, being a good son, being a good daughter, being just good to people, being somebody that other people want to be around, being somebody that other people want to spend their time with. But now, apparently, people find that forming meaningful relationships takes too much time. It takes too much effort. Therefore, let me identify this thing that is beyond reproach and praise me. Praise me from afar. And as for asexuals, I've talked about them before, and I did not think that asexuality is some very positive thing, but I think it's an after-the-fact rationalization, being asexual for not getting laid. It's one thing to have the desire to have sex and fail at obtaining it, and it's another thing to have a low sex drive, which I don't think is a negative thing. I mean, I talk very negatively of people who base their lives around sex, who I would assume that they have a high sex drive, so I don't think that having a low sex drive is a bad thing, especially when we have a society that encourages people to redirect their sexual impulses in all sorts of fucked up ways. But I don't think that having a low sex drive makes you asexual. Again, like the reasoning that I use with regard to homosexuality. We still exist in heterosexual bodies. You can't get away from that. Your body reproduces heterosexually. I mean, you can behave in a way that does not match in the way that your body is designed, but I don't think it makes you that thing. But that's getting into semantics. And if asexual as well, I just don't experience sexual arousal, that's impossible. I really think that's impossible. I mean, there might be some very rare people out there who are impotent, but I don't think self-identified asexuals are that. I'm sure they wake up with a morning wood just like the rest of us. And as for why they treat doubt as personal attacks, I don't know. I would assume that it's very similar to people who these kids who try really hard to convince you that they're gay. These girls with boobs and feminine faces who scream, "Not a girl" at a camera phone. Everyone wants to be special, but, you know, they're doing it the wrong way. And that's all I can really say. What are your thoughts on psychedelics? I'm anti-drug. I don't even like drinking anymore. I've experienced the highs, I've experienced the lows, and you know what? I have to experience these things for a reason. I do not want to soften the blow in any way. I do not want to escape in this cocoon of drunkenness or inebriation. I'm able to scroll through Tumblr tags and scroll through Vine, search for shit on Vine, and look at all this cringe-inducing shit. And I don't need to resort to drugs to escape the pain from that. And really, it's not painful anymore. I don't know how I come out of it unscathed. Once upon a time, I wasn't able to. But now, you know what? Maybe it's because I've let God take care of that stuff. The stuff that I compile, the stuff that I dive into and talk about, are all products of Satan's influence. I believe that the things that I collect for you people, you wonderful people, are products of satanic influence. And I shouldn't say that it doesn't hurt to look at this stuff, because on some level it does. It hurts to see all of these kids who have wayward souls who are completely lost. It hurts. I feel really bad for them. But I'm no longer scared of it, because they're not influencing me in any way. The people on the Vine marathons, the people who make the blog posts that I feature on Tumblristas, they are not convincing me that bad ideas are good. So, in conclusion, I suppose that I'm against drugs because I have nothing to fear. I have nothing to escape. Next, you came down pretty hard on people who frequent prostitutes in your last episode. What are your thoughts on the women themselves, given that many of them are either in financial straits so dire they have little choice but to sell their bodies, or come from family backgrounds so broken that they never really stood a chance? Love your work. Can't wait for the next Tumblristas. I do sympathize with women who are in such great amounts of poverty that they have to resort to this, but there are women's shelters out there, more than there are men's shelters. If things get so bad for a woman, there is a very large support network that could accommodate them. I think in order to understand prostitution, we need to look at who's protecting them. Pimps. Prostitutions without pimps can't be done. If a prostitute does not have a pimp, then the Johns can just like, I had sex with you, fuck you, I'm not paying you. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. They can't do anything. That's where pimps come in. And pimps, I think, are the true alpha males. And I'm not saying this in endearing terms. They get paid for having sex with women. These are men who are truly dominant over women, who have physical and social dominance over women and have exercised this dominance to its natural conclusion. Obviously, this sort of conduct is very harmful to any society. I think that prostitutes mostly are women who are so enamored with what complete and total dominance looks like that they will lower themselves to an extreme extent to be around it, to continue to be around that dominance. I've mentioned this book before. It's a book called Pimp, and it's written by Iceberg Slim. And I've listened, I haven't finished it yet because I have the audiobook version of it. Pimps are incredibly broken people who are under no spell, who are not under the spell of feminine influence. And in Iceberg Slim's case, he was raised by a horrible mother. He was a product of his mother, who put him in terrible situation after terrible situation. Think about it. Your mother is the first person, the first feminine influence you ever deal with. What happens if she fosters such a hatred? What happens? What happens if she fosters that hatred in her children? Such a hatred that her child, her son, will go through life with a completely brazen attitude towards women. People who don't realize how important parenthood is, how important motherhood is, how important fatherhood is, make for the worst parents. If you mishandle your responsibilities as a mother or a father so severely, you're going to create a generation of pimps and prostitutes. And what does it say about these women who like being treated like shit? Everyone is broken, and it breaks my heart, but we need to assign blame where it can be correctly assigned. What is your gripe against Bernie Sanders over? He's the candidate for the unskilled. He is the candidate for the idiot that thinks going to college, free college, will give them a great life. Even though the people who would go to college for free will major in the most worthless bullshit you could possibly imagine. The only reason he wants free college is because it'll force everybody to take these bullshit prerequisite humanities classes, which again are nothing more than boilerplate 101 how to be a good guy bullshit. College, by and large, does not create skilled people. It creates a generation of retards. Generation after generation of retards whose only use in life is getting retards like Bernie Sanders elected. And moreover, college promotes this bullshit progressive credentialism, where you need all of these pieces of paper in order to do a job. Now, tell me what's wrong with that picture. Why do you need this piece of paper? Because that piece of paper is making somebody rich. That piece of paper is funding somebody's unskilled bullshit lifestyle. Professors are just people who have avoided work all their life. People who work for universities are people that have avoided real work all their life. And they're being rewarded for it because, well, you need a degree. You need a degree to show people that you can do something. Oh, I can write papers regurgitating your opinions back at you? You fuck. Observe the logic here. You need college to be economically productive. What do you learn in college? How to be economically unproductive. How to be a fucking waste. Because you're learning how to make a whole lot of money sitting there and lecture. Yeah, you sitting there, that's paying the bills. We as a culture need to be actively destroying the unskilled among us. And not only that, actively destroying the mechanisms by which the unskilled are rewarded. And university is that mechanism. Your professor doesn't know how to tie his own fucking shoes, but he could sure tell you about Karl Marx. Because that's what civilization hinges upon. It's not like Bernie Sanders is telling people, go learn a fucking skill, you idiot. Then maybe we'll pay for your shit. No. He's one of these idiots that thinks, oh, degrees are equal, it doesn't matter, I don't need a degree. How many times have you heard that bullshit? Is it plausible that the United States will break up into sections based on race, and will the North American political arena be based on racial politics? Also, nice dubs. Well, yeah, it is episode 55, so thank you. I've said before that I would like the U.S. to break up into smaller regions. I think that would be the best chance we have at peace. The best chance we have at decent lives for everyone. But you see, America's not a nation. America is not defined by blood or heritage, but it is defined by money. And there is a lot of money to be made in America as it presently exists. If America had any nationalistic impulses, I know it seems counterintuitive, but it would break up. If anybody had any impulse to preserve their people, it would divide. But the only interest that anybody in America has, is money. If America were to split up, there would be less money to be made. There'd be less money to be made off of it. And that's why it's not plausible. Alright, next. What are your thoughts on communist states like the DDR that believed in family values and anti-degeneracy? I'll have to pass on this one because I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about what you're talking about here. All I'll say is that living in the Bay Area, growing up in the Bay Area, I came across a lot of these socialist communist types, and all of them were some variety of freak that they did not limit themselves to having a freaky ideology. I'll just say that. Hey CF, love your show. Thanks for your work. Just wondering, what are your thoughts on Stoicism? Let me look up the definition of that so that I'm not going to get anything wrong here. The endurance of pain or hardship without a display of feelings and without complaint. Well, I think that what I do here could be interpreted as complaining, but I think that's a good way to be with regard to petty, inconsequential concerns, not letting these small stuff get to you. I think everyone should learn how to prioritize and fight the battles that are of some consequence rather than just focusing on petty annoyances. So, next. The whole neotenous and violent section of episode 54 got me thinking about the social hierarchy of the Covenant in Halo. The prophets are the more neotenous species, and the elites, while neotenous themselves, are more suited for combat than the prophets. Anyway, I'm not here to go into Halo more. I had a question. I want to go into video game design as a career, but I know I'll be dealing with some BS in some of the courses I'll have to take. That being said, should I follow through or learn some kind of trade? Anyway, thanks for reading and keep up the good work. I've heard of those, like, colleges that specialize, oh, look, you're going to learn how to design video games, but I don't know enough about the industry to know if those kinds of people that go for those for-profit schools get hired. As in everything, just look at what the root of gaming is. How you make games. You learn programming. and learning programming or software engineering or whatever it is that would give you a fundamental skill set. It doesn't sound as exciting, but I would bet that that's what developers and publishing companies are looking for. And I think programming, software engineering, that's a good thing to go into, because everyone uses computers and computers aren't going away anytime soon. In other words, learning programming, it would make you indispensable to somebody. And it would also give you flexibility beyond just making games. And somebody linked to a Reddit thread here from r/AskGayBros. Not safe for work, anal ulcers and herpes question. Jesus fucking Christ. Alright, let's take a look. Okay, let's take a look here. I recently hooked up my new boyfriend for the first time. Should be hooked up with my boyfriend for the first time. The hookup was mostly oral for fuck's sake. He also put sex toys without condom in my ass, no genital penetration whatsoever. It was my first time having anything penetrate my this is fucking disgusting. And my boyfriend also took a long time performing oral sex on my anal region. Oh my god, I'm gonna fucking vomit. What the fuck is wrong with people? What the fuck? Alright, let's just skip to the TLDR he has at the bottom here. Had oral sex with BF about a week ago. Got painful ulcers and a hemorrhoid. So I think I have anal herpes. Doc cannot conclude anything from a swab, but immediately thinks it's herpes. Are there other conditions besides herpes that give anal ulcers? Let's pull up one of my favorite Bible verses here. Romans 1:27. In the same way, the men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. Men committed shameful acts with other men and received in themselves the due penalty for their error. And I think that's a perfect place to leave this, because I'm not reading any of the comments. ICF living in the UK, and with the recent migrant crisis in Europe, Africans sailing to Italy and Arabs smuggling themselves in through the Balkans, I feel as if I am burning in a burning house and I'm the only one that can smell the smoke. Everyone else seems either uncaring or actively welcoming to the third worlders with no thought as to the consequences. What advice would you give to young Europeans who have similar ideas to yours on living in such an environment? Thank you for reading. I don't know. I'm sorry to say, but I don't know. The best that I can guess is learn how to live in the wilderness. Because you're not going to convince any people, because the white race is more or less done for. Either white people don't want to do anything because they will lose financially from it, or they just want to see what they want to see. They want to believe that people are like themselves. That, oh, they're just like us, they're just falling on hard times. They aren't here to leech off our expansive welfare system, nah. The problem is that people aren't allowed to ask themselves questions like, wait, are these the people partially responsible for creating the conditions that they want to flee? And you can make all the excuses about, foreign intervention, war-torn regions, blah, blah, blah. Japan got nuked to hell and back. However many, less than a century ago. Visit Japan now, and everything looks as if nothing happened. This is because the Japanese are a quality people, by and large. They do not need to flee conditions that are forced upon them from outside. They can actually repair things, even if they didn't make the mess. No one understands. And no one understands it less than white people, it seems. That what makes a nation are its people. That nations do not create quality people create nations. They sustain nations. They build nations. They improve them. White people do not understand that if people have some success where they are, they tend to stay there. Because why wouldn't they? Why would you, after carving a niche out for yourself, after experiencing success where you were born, where you're staying, why would you uproot your entire life and start from scratch? It doesn't happen. Therefore, we get the worst immigrants. We get genetic refuse. But no one is allowed to say that, or you go to jail. Honestly, if you're gonna go to jail for some stupid bullshit like sending out hate tweets, like they're known to do in Europe, they jail people. I think it was in the UK, they put somebody in prison for sending out offensive tweets. Never mind, I'm not gonna finish that. All I'll say is this, the white man has no backbone. There is no backbone left in the white man. And I'm talking about in general, not the white people amongst the however many subscribers I have. You people are fine. You people have some fight left in you in some way. But again, there are thousands of us and millions of them. Next, I know that you have mentioned Christian before, so I was wondering what you think of Christian's new transgender identity if you follow him at all. Also, do you know anything about the forum Kiwi Farms that follows Chris and other internet weirdos? I don't know about Kiwi Farms, but I've been following Chris Chan, his saga, pretty much since it began, since late 2007. But I think that Chris Chan is fascinating because of something somebody said on an image board. They said of Chris Chan that the more fucked up society gets, the more fucked up Chris Chan gets. And like I said on Twitter, the line between quirky internet autistic guy and a deranged cross-dresser is a very, very fine line, as we've seen. I don't know when he was born. I think he's born on the borderline between Gen X and Millennial, but he is the Millennial. And I don't know how you could disprove that. I mean, he's into weird sexual shit. He's autistic, addicted to pop culture. It all lines up. Hey CF, big fan here. I'm in my first semester of college pursuing a computer science degree. In just the first few days, things have been happening on campus and in classes that are making me seriously reconsider my decision. I'm sure you have a decent idea of what I mean. Without going into any details, I don't think I can make it 4 years here, especially when I'll start really having to fulfill gen ed requirements. I'm good with my hands and have a mechanically geared brain. Do you think a trade like plumbing, as you have mentioned, would be a better option in my situation, or did you find it easier to stick it out as time went on? Any input you have and or general advice would be much appreciated. Thank you for doing your show and God bless. Plumbing, car repair, anything like that, I would advise. Honestly, college gets harder as it goes on, because not only are you going to have to keep up with the increasing workload, the more difficult workloads, you're still going to have to deal with all of the bullshit politics of it. So if you have any impulse to work with your hands, if you are not afraid of manual labor, go into a trade. Because you're going to be paying to learn a skill from people that aren't actively trying to ruin your culture. You're going to be dealing with people that aren't actively trying to put you in a bad mood. What do you think of accelerationists, those who want to stop resisting decadence so that everything will fall and be rebuilt as soon as possible? I also found this quote you might like relating to all the people who blame the website Tumblr for the actions of its users. Evil does not come from unfeeling dead technology, but from the dead hearts of people. Nikolai Velimirovich. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Tangentially, what degree do you think technology had in the degradation of society? The French Revolution proves that computers aren't necessary to go full dildo, but the speed of telecommunications and internet would suggest that it does have an effect. Lastly, I feel like this may have been asked previously, but have you had anyone that you featured in Tumblristas or Vine Marathons contact you in any way? Tumblristas, the page, I have been contacted, and there was a rather large campaign to attempt to get the page shut down about 1.5 years ago. A couple months before I started doing podcasts. But through Tumblristas videos and Vine Marathons, no, knock on wood, not yet. As for accelerationists, honestly, it's not the decadence that I'm worried about accelerating. I don't think that should be accelerated because we will always find a way to reverse engineer it and make it so that it won't make society collapse. I'm concerned about the spirit of people. the mood that other people put me in. And all these people who subscribe to all these weird sexualities and gender identities, they are in some way a reflection on me because they belong to the same culture that I do. So no, I'm not for accelerating decadence because it would just never end. Nobody would ever put a stop to it because society would find a way to make it economically viable. Again, in America, everybody's just looking to make a buck. And nobody's going to turn it upside down for moral reasons. Maybe if we imported a bunch of feral third worlders with criminal records, maybe that would shock people awake, but again, I doubt it. People would just say with their dying breaths, I deserve this. I deserve this. You know, as they're choking on their own blood. Is there anything else here? Oh yeah, technology, like you said, acceleration. It makes everything go faster. It doesn't change anything. And you're right, the French Revolution is an example of this. Throughout history, you will find just idiocy. People who are just butt-fucking idiot stupid. Technology allows the idiots to organize. It allows them to further examine their own idiocy and say, how can I take this farther? How can I take this to the most logical conclusion? How can I be more extreme than my peers? That's what technology does. Now, this is I'm going to say this. Technology doesn't, if technology didn't exist, this would still happen. It would just happen at a slower rate. So again, Tumblr is just the website. It does not create these things. It just, it allows them to be expressed. And, you know, Tumblr does feed into these, the psychosis of people. But there has to be some psychosis there to begin with. ACF, have you ever listened to The Fragile by 9 Inch Nails? It seems to be very much about what you stand for. It's an album about keeping things intact and conserving them. But in the end, it falls apart. Sort of like what's happening to our people now. No, I haven't, but I'll check that out. It's been insanely hard for me to branch out of my two-friend social circle. In all honesty, it's because I fear rejection from whoever I'm trying to connect with. This was a little bit easier back before your show and before I started amassing all these new views. You said you're not the best with people, and I think a good number of us have that same issue. It doesn't help when you look at the common person as a heathen right out of the box. But you also talked about learning to enjoy your own company. I don't remember you talking about how you did that, but do you think learning to enjoy your own company will open the doors for you to let other people in? It's an embarrassing topic to some people, but I feel the stuff we get into has that toll. Any thoughts? If not, no biggie. Look, I'm not trying to create a bunch of shut-ins who isolate themselves from the world. All I'm saying is, this stuff is out there, protect yourself from it. Do not shun your friends, unless they, of course, shun you, then you have really no choice. And learning to enjoy your own company, I think, is tied very closely with self-confidence. And you mentioned that you fear rejection from people. Well, maybe your self-confidence isn't where it needs to be quite yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. Confidence isn't something that comes quickly. It comes with time. But you have to live by your own rules. You have to live by your own standards and judge yourself by your own standards. And those standards need to be informed by something other than, whatever society values now. I think fear of rejection comes from a fear that the person who is rejecting you might be right. But again, if you have a solid core of standards, if you have solid values, that won't be an issue anymore. Rejection will be something you no longer fear. And that is what I'm saying. Be better than other people. Do not fear rejection from the inferior. Do not fear that. How can leftists be pro-abortion? It actually makes my head hurt. And somebody replied here to you. Actually, it makes sense. Leftists want to legalize sex change operations which render the user infertile and useless. No baby. They also want to legalize abortions because that means women are useless and infertile. No baby. The reason why they don't want people to have babies is because they view their own offspring, their own potential offspring, as competition for resources. I know this is incredibly sane and short-sighted, but that's what liberals are. They value the immediate over the long term. And what are babies? They're a long-term investment that will pay off not when they're little people who are only capable of pooping, vomiting, and crying. But these things will turn out to be an investment, a worthy investment, if you raise your children right, if you take your duties as a parent right. They will not be a drain upon your resources, but they will be a source of meaning. And the truth is that simple. Those belonging to the left, in both politics and conduct, truly view their own children as competition. Just let that sink in, how pathetic that is. That you see this little helpless thing as a threat to you. Next, how do you stay calm, sane, after browsing Tumblr for new material of Tumblristas? Also check them dubs. Well, like I said earlier, I have nothing to fear. And this is how I keep it together. So, let's read some emails. Okay, this email links to an article. It's apparently the title of the article is "Architecture Really LGBT Friendly?" And unfortunately, I can't read this because the link that was sent to me sends me to some now exclusive to subscribers page, and I don't want to pay to read this article if it's just gonna piss me off. So I'm sorry about that. Dear Common Filth, I am a former chronic masturbator, and I attribute a lot of my motivation to quit that addiction because of your brutal honesty. I was always a right-leaning person. However, my personal/private actions did not reflect my ideology. I spoke with others. I knew there was a gap, but orgasms literally blinded me to my hypocrisy. I watched all kinds of porn. Cuck porn was the most thrilling because of the lengths of depravity it took my self-esteem. There was a quote in one video that made me seem weary to the life I was leading. It was, quote, "I'm a nigger-loving bitch boy," unquote. After that moment, I knew I was so dependent on coming that I would take any humiliation. But I asked myself, is this a good life? It was you who changed that. You said in plain terms that masturbation was wrong and I should be judged for it. No one in my family knew how disgusting I was, and I had too much pride to admit it. It could have only been an outside force that would make me change. Long story short, you have been an inspiration to me, CF. You make a difference. Thank you, and God bless. Well, thank you for sharing that also brutally honest email with me. I'm sure it was pretty difficult to share that, but I thank you for doing so. Hey, CF, hopefully I'm submitting this question correctly. Yeah, you are. Don't worry. My first question is, how do people truly believe non-binary genders to be real? Have you or anyone found any evidence of this existing in history prior to the 21st century? How do you rationally deal with leftists who believe in things like this, while showing proof and not coming off as a bigot? Not that being called a bigot is a bad thing, but they will instantly shut out whatever you have to say if you are labeled as one. I've come across some like propaganda from them, and all it really amounts to is, oh, here are these cultures that had a third gender and therefore it's legitimate. And I didn't look into their sources or anything, it was an infographic, but one thing I noticed about all of the cultures with non-binary gender identities, or so they claimed, they were all failed cultures, all failed civilizations, all non-starters of civilizations. Which leads me to believe that when people start thinking of themselves as something other than man or woman, or thinking that they're the opposite, that their brain doesn't match their body, even though they have no way of actually knowing this, when this poison starts seeping into the minds of a given people, that culture, the culture that those people belong to, done. Goodbye, rest in peace. I don't even have to look into these claims of third genders all throughout history, all over the world, all these non-binary genders. I don't have to look into the validity of these things to know this. And the second part of this email. My second question is more personal. My sister is huge into every aspect of social justice and is currently married to a Jewish man with whom they have 2 children, one of which is autistic. We share the same father who recently passed away. Christian man who loved God and loved helping others, and instilling morals into all of his children. But my sister did not receive these lessons well. She ended up going to an all-female college for political science and gender studies paid for by her grandfather on her mother's side. She is now as far left as one can be. I hope that she can one day be saved, but I fear that it will never happen. But what I do worry about is the children. As I mentioned, her oldest is autistic and as such will likely be susceptible to whatever leftism she may teach them. I legitimately fear that she will steer them towards being gay or trans because she is that progressive. The children live several states away from me, so there's no way for me to constantly interact with them. How do I prevent them from learning the degeneracy? Is there any hope? Thank you in advance. If you live several states away, did I read that right? Yeah, several states away from you, and you aren't in regular contact with them, no. I don't think there is any hope, unless you go move over there, which, why? Why would you want to be around your sister if she's like that? I get it, family is important, but like I say all the time, loyalty goes both ways. And it is suicidal to be loyal to something which is not loyal to you. It's stupid to be loyal to something that shares none of your values. I mean, even if she is your sister, it's not the end-all be-all that you share blood. If she's not going to take herself seriously, why should you? So we go from that to this. Hey, Common Filth, first of all, I want to say I love your channel. Keep up the good work. Thank you. About 3 weeks ago, my father came out as a transgender female, which did not come as a big surprise to me, seeing as he was not a major male influence in my life, and was very feminine. He claimed he found out when he was 9 or 10 years old, which is when the human mind is still underdeveloped. Correct. My question is to you, how do I deal with this? I have tried to explain to him how many transgender people commit suicide or regret it after the fact, but he still thinks his choice is right. I tried talking to my college therapist, but this liberal mentality has also affected therapists. I think they're some of the first that were affected by it, very early adopters. I was told it's his choice and you should respect it. What would you do in my situation, and what do you think of the fact that even people paid by the state to help people through tough issues don't really help you unless you go along with the societal norm? Thank you for taking the time to answer this question, and have a great day. Well, that is a huge problem. That therapists aren't there. Again, these are unskilled people, just like professors, just like anybody who works for a school district or university. Unskilled people who have somehow maneuvered themselves into a position where they're making a comfortable salary, where they keep themselves comfortable by telling their clients lies. My advice to you, don't listen to these people. Listen to yourself. Listen to yourself first and foremost. Your judgment is correct. Your dad is sick. Your dad is ill. Deeply, deeply troubled and sick. This fucking therapist, he's sick too, but fuck him. Don't go to anybody. Don't go to any of these professionals who really can't afford to challenge the status quo. Because, like I said, their loyalty is to their salary. Not to any truth, not to any decency, not to preserving anything. Their loyalty is to no one. No one but their bank accounts. I think you would have an easier time accepting that your father is dead. I mean, he is a transgender female after all. He probably wants you to use this, and that pronouns and a different name. So you know what? As far as you're concerned, your dad is dead. And what I just said, I just gave to you for free. Which is what your fucking therapist should have said, that therapist piece of shit. Now, that's out of the way. Let's change it up a little bit with another email. Hi, Common Filth. Just wanted to share a Bible reading with you that will lift your spirit. Ephesians is an excellent reading in regards to dealing with living in this despicable world. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes on those who are disobedient. Therefore do not be associated with them. For once you were darkness, but now in the Lord you are light. Live as children of light. For the fruit of the light is found in all that is good and right and true. Try to find out what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them, for it is shameful to even mention what such people do secretly. But everything exposed by light becomes visible, for everything that becomes visible is light. Therefore, it says, Sleeper, awake, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. From Ephesians 5:6-14. The only time that Jesus was actually physically violent was when the Second Temple was being defiled by moneymakers. In this age of grace, a new temple is being built in place of wood and stone. It is built in the hearts of those who have faith and live in the light. Do you think our Lord has any less patience for the decadence of these modern times? Thank you for being a watchman, walking the perimeter of the actual Third Temple, shining a light on the dark things that may try to enter into our hearts. Tolerance being the main culprit. With God's blessings, Jay. Thank you very much for the email. And this one says, I know you don't have all the answers, but I was reading something from 8chan that prompted me to write this question. Why is it so appealing to some men to mutilate themselves and become women? Do you think it is some the grass is always greener kind of mentality? How does living out some odd fantasy you have do good for anyone or yourself? I understand that not every man can be some extremely masculine person, but it baffles me as to why you'd want to throw your life away for some fleeting fantasy or odd inkling of, I should have been a girl. Some people say that women have it easier than men, so that might be a reason, but I feel like there are much more deep-rooted issues that must be addressed before assuming that you were meant to be a girl. But self-introspection and self-reflection is not exactly fun or exciting. But most people who decide to become trannies aren't exactly the most popular to begin, so it would seem they have the time and power to look deeper into themselves. I honestly think that the source is depression and isolation. And this whole, it's easier to be a girl thing. I mean, like, maybe once you hit puberty, maybe once you get all this male attention, yeah, then it's easier. Because you're popular, you're pretty, you're fertile. That's ultimately the reason why women have it easier for a time. But once that fertility goes away, it's not so easy anymore. I mean, unless you've actually planned for the future and made yourself into a mother, or at the very least found yourself a loyal husband. But even still, when things are easier for a girl, I mean, by some measure, not by every measure, certainly, you still can't replicate that. You still can't be fertile because you have no fucking eggs if you're gonna be, I'm in the wrong body. You have no eggs. You cannot be impregnated. Therefore, the essence of what makes a woman, it isn't there, no matter what your fucking brain thinks. What do they always bitch about? TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminism. Yeah, such a radical belief that women are women and not men. We live in a cartoon. Even cartoons are more real. Okay, next message. And this is a link to hivequal.org, which I mentioned on a recent episode of this show. And the message attached says, everyone has a Jewish status. We are all Jewish ? Equal. Yeah, I mean, just just think about that. HIV equal. The only way that you get HIV, with very, very, very rare exception, the only way you get it is by behaving so irresponsibly and so recklessly. Yet, oh, we're all equal. HIV negative people, no, you're equal to HIV positive people. And what do we do about it? What do we do about it? We let them take the position, the top position in the social hierarchy, rather than saying, wait a minute. Wait a fucking minute. Why is your lifestyle associated with all of this bullshit? Yet you want to be superior? You want all the accolades? You want all the praise? Fuck you. But nobody says it because everybody's afraid. And if they aren't afraid, they actually support this. They convince themselves that bad ideas are actually good ideas, and you're just bigoted. Okay, I can't do that anymore. I can't fucking think about it anymore. Will you check out this video I made on cuckolding and give me your opinion? Yes, I will. And I will do that next week. I'll talk about it and I will link to your video. I'll do that on next week's episode. I will save your question on AskFM and do that. I'll follow through. Dear Common Filth, as this new school year begins, I find myself stuck in a social science research class as well as a human relations class, while still being in the school's gay-straight alliance, which I joined before I became red-pilled. I feel that the human relations and GSA specifically are going to be vessels for Marxist propaganda, since the message of the human relations course is something along the lines of analyzing stereotypes and how they lead to bias, discrimination, prejudice, and dehumanization of people. And I already know the GSA is full-blown blue pill, more like full-blown AIDS, but in there I usually pretain myself and don't interject in their conversation, circle jerk, since if I openly left I would most likely be shunned. My question is, how do I deal with, for lack of a better term, this leftist agenda that is being pushed? Thank you, sorry for the length, and God bless. You're gonna have to live with being shunned. You're gonna have to live with that. But look who's shunning you. It's people whose company you don't want. You don't live by their standards. Your self-worth is not based on their very dubious standards, so don't let it faze you. Welcome it. Remember that thing I said about loyalty not too long ago. And that thing about loyalty I say all the time. Think about it, gay-straight alliance. Who the fuck benefits from that alliance? Certainly not you. So fuck them. Get the fuck out of there and make new friends. Hey, Common Filth, what do you think about Islam and Muslims? Thanks for the time. I love your channel. Best wishes. Thank you. Why is Islam growing and why is Christianity shrinking? And this is all I'm going to say about Islam. It's all I'm going to say about Muslims. Whatever we think about them, however they're portrayed to us, however they actually behave, we can conclude this. There is a future for them. It's definitely not to our taste, but there is a future. They actually know how to defend what's theirs. Do whites know how to defend what's theirs? No, they don't. And you can say, well, that's because of Christianity. Bullshit. How many whites really believe in God? European whites, which is where Muslim immigration is happening. Immigration from Muslim countries into Europe. How many whites really believe in God? How many whites are willing to fight for what is theirs? How many whites are willing to put themselves on the line to preserve their people, their culture, to secure a future for their people? I know I'm going back a lot. I know I'm repeating myself a lot. But we're dealing with an imbalance of thousands versus millions. Thousands of people who want to preserve what's theirs, who want to fight for what's theirs, to fight for a future, and millions who don't. Meanwhile, in the Muslim world, the reverse is true. And that's all I will say. That is all. I live in a country where gay rights and all this cancer is still considered a joke, but I'm still terrified that one day it will manifest in my country, which is possible since many upper-class kids here are very liberal. How do I prepare for this? Casual belligerence. Speak on impulse. Say what is on your mind, regardless of whether it is acceptable or not, because you are a part of the culture. Your mere presence can change hearts and minds, but only if you speak up. But if doing this will land you in jail, then I guess the cancer has already spread. But if that's not the case, go forth and speak your mind. Everyone, go forth and speak your mind. Go out and speak your mind. Because really, what else do you have? And if you're afraid that somebody's gonna say something that'll make you look stupid, don't. You're not dealing with smart people out there. People will probably be so intimidated by any unkosher opinion being expressed in public that they'll probably freeze up. Find it within yourself and do it.